यूपीएससी के अकॉर्डिंग इम्पॉर्टेंट कंटेंट पाने के लिए ईजी क्लासेस को ज़रूर सब्सक्राइब कर लें और बेल आइकन भी प्रेस कर दें जिससे कि नोटिफिकेशन मिलता रहे।
Hello, good afternoon everyone. Good afternoon everyone. Today we have been discussing our moral judgment, and at particular point we have been discussing the nature of moral judgment. Just come to the point. Nature of moral judgment. We have been discussing this particular point, nature of moral judgment. And very first thing, as we know, there is a difference between the is and ought. As you know, the descriptive judgment always describe what is the case. So, but in our moral judgment, we know we always describe what ought to be. So it is always the matter of ought, I should. What ought to be, not what is the case. What is the case is described in natural sciences and everywhere. In other factual positive sciences, positive sciences, natural sciences, you know. But our ethics is a normative science. So in ethics we discuss ought. This is the first thing you know, and it is also known as the difference of it is also known as the difference of fact and a value. So I am putting in very first point. And the third thing, you know, there is also a difference of actual and ideal. So it's a matter of actual. It's a matter of your actual, and it's a matter of ideal. So one is this is a descriptive judgment, and this is a very nature of your moral judgment. So moral judgment is all about what should be or what ought to be, and it always discusses the values. It's a matter of value, and values are always ideals, you know. So it is matter of ideal, it's not. So you understand the first point. Now move to next one. Next, again, you know that all judgments are, rest of the judgments are known as just a judgment or proposition. You know, other judgments, we will again come on it, other judgments are known as a proposition, you know, but propositions. But it's not, you know, in the other judgments are in sense of logical sense, just they are known as a proposition. But in our ethics, this is kind of a sentence, not a proposition. This is kind of sentence. So it is used in a jural sense, or you can say in a judicial sense. So moral judgment are used in a judicial sense, you know. In a judicial sense, it's a sentence. That's a great difference between the normative judgment and other judgment, you understand. And the third point, if you want to understand, is the nature. As far as the nature of moral judgment is concerned, it's inferential in nature. Why it's inferential in nature? It's inferential in nature. inferential nature. Why inferential nature? It's application of a particular principle, particular moral principle, or application of a moral principle in a particular case, in a particular action, in a particular case of action, or you can say in a particular instance. And that's why, again, with this help of universal, with this help of this universal statement means the moral principle, and then another particular statement is your a particular action. We try to determine the validity of this action in the light of the moral principle. So it's inferential in nature, because it's examining, it's examination of the value of a particular action in the light of a moral principle. That's why it's inferential nature. But in most of cases, ordinarily it is immediate and intuitive. That's very interesting. Immediate and intuitive, you know. It's immediate and intuitive ordinarily, but in a case of sometimes, but generally we apprehend directly. The validity, the the morality, the goodness, the worth, the value of a particular action is directly apprehended by a particular person in a particular case. But in some cases, when he has a doubt, then he make his reason. And again, later on we will be discussing the vital role of reason in making moral judgment as far as the reflective morality is concerned. So we'll come and we will come on this particular point, and again we will be discussing this particular point. Right now what we have to understand is this immediate and intuitive. This is the third, and this is your nature. And one more thing is important, and fourth more important thing is there is objective validity. Just try to understand. It has its own objective validity. So it's not only it is not only based on your personal conviction or kind of subjective morality, as your Protagoras says that whatever seems man good is a good for him. That's not kind of case. No, it has objective validity. It is examined. So this is nature of a moral judgment. So ultimately we say whether this action is a good or bad, good or evil. So action has its own objective validity. Otherwise, there will be no significance of in ethics, in studying in ethics. Okay. So now come back. So this is your nature of the moral judgment, and now we are going to discuss how it is distinguished from your. Let me use this one. Okay. And now we are going to discuss another thing. What is another thing? Now we are going to discuss is how it is distinguished, the moral judgment. Moral judgment. Distinguished from aesthetic and logical judgment. Aesthetic and logical judgment. Just try to understand. Distinguish from your aesthetic and logical. Earlier we have been discussing, as you know, that what is logical judgment. Let me write down over here. Logical. When you say logical, just try to understand all three judgments are critical judgment: moral, aesthetic, and logical. I'm sorry. So moral, logical, and aesthetic, all three judgments are critical. So first thing you have to understand, all are critical. Okay. And the second important thing is, but all are critical, fine. All are proposition also, all are also judgment, all are critical judgment. So they are also known as a judgment. Try to understand, they all are judgment. Okay. So what's the difference? Difference is all are all are not appreciative. So the difference is critical or appreciative sometimes you say, but okay, it's enough. Logical judgment, or as we have already discussed, this is a proposition, that's why it is known as proposition. Proposition, and so it's a proposition. All are judgment, but it's a proposition. And your moral judgment, moral is known as, this is logical. What is moral? Moral is not a proposition, it's a sentence. It's a kind of sentence, you know. And the interesting thing is, aesthetic judgment is appreciative. Better to say that's appreciative. So what is aesthetic judgment? Aesthetic judgment is, aesthetic judgments are your appreciative. They are appreciative. There is a kind of appreciation. Always you appreciate, this is a beautiful thing. So when you say this is a beautiful thing, this is a beautiful car, it's appreciative. This is a beautiful house, this is a beautiful picture, is appreciative. So there is appreciation, there is sense of appreciation, fine. But what's a moral judgment? Moral judgment is always accompanied with two things. One, obligation. Second, reverence. So it has its own sentiments. It is accompanied with the sentiments. It has own sentiments. What are these sentiments? These sentiments are the sense of obligation. You know, there is a sense of obligation, and not only sense of obligation, but also there is a reverence. There is a sense of, there is a feeling of reverence. There is a feeling of reverence for the values. And that's why when you perform something, you feel sense of complacence, self-complacence. And when we commit something wrong, we feel kind of remorse. That's a natural phenomenon. When we do something, we feel kind of, we feel kind of proud. We feel kind of honor. Self-complacence. But when we commit something wrong, something evil, then there is a the sense of remorse, sense of regret. Understand. So there is, that's why there is a reverence of this value, feeling of reverence, and in one word we call it sentiment. So it is affective element is also earlier we have been discussed is this one, the three aspect of moral consciousness. So three aspect of moral consciousness. Affective consciousness is there, and cognitive consciousness is also there. This cognitive consciousness, you understand, there is strong impulse to do something good. And earlier we have discussed this particular point. Repeatedly I say that Kant is a man who have said that the notion of good lies in human conscience. That is the locus of entire human thought. Okay, so we have been discussing how the moral judgment distinguishes from logical and aesthetic judgment. So it's only moral judgment which is accompanied with the sentiments of obligation and reverence. So it is accompanied with the sentiments of obligation and reverence. And in one short word you can say that it is accompanied. The term is accompanied with the sentiments. I think you understand. Now let us move. Now we have to understand what is the object of, now what we actually examine, what we actually evaluate. So we have to know the object of moral judgment. Just try to understand object of moral judgment. Try to understand. The very first thing, it was Bentham and Emil who says that the consequences are the first thing. Consequences are the object of moral evaluation. Object of moral evaluation. But the point is, in fact, Bentham and Emil, right now we are discussing the Bentham and Emil. Bentham and Emil wrongly thinks what they think that the consequences are, but and they do not give the importance to motive. Why? Because the Bentham and Emil takes the motive not in a sense of consequences. As far as the motive is concerned, try to understand. As far as the motive is concerned, the literal meaning of motive is the driving force, which makes the motion, which makes us moving on. And what make us moving on? What does it make us moving on, or what does it make to move? Is, according to Bentham and Mill, is nothing but the pleasure and a pain. So for Bentham and Mill, it's a pleasure. Try to understand, that's very interesting. Pleasure and a pain. So man is a pleasure seeking and pain shunning, pain avoiding. So man is a pleasure seeking and a pain shunning animal. So that's why Bentham and Mill say that there is hardly any difference in any action. So driving force is nothing but the pain. Driving force is nothing but the pain and a pleasure. Or in one word, if you want to say, it's nothing but pleasure. And that's why they do not, Bentham and Emil, do not give importance to your motive. They give importance only to consequences. So the first thing, but the concept of Bentham and Emil is, concept of Bentham and Emil is misnomer. It's not correct. Why misnomer? Why misleading? Why not correct? Because the motive is, it's not only, we are coming on consequences, but the first thing, motive is not only, the pain and a pleasure are not the only motive of every action. No, not at all. Yes, of course, it's the prime factor, and of course it's a great sentiment, and of course it's the strongest impulse. But at the same time, we have to understand there is a difference between, there is a distinction, better to say, distinction between your motive and there is a difference between, motive has always a definite end. So driving force is not the motive. Driving force is only, yes, of course driving force is efficient cause, but not the final cause. Driving force is only, try to understand, pain and a pleasure are known as a driving force. So driving force is efficient cause. It's efficient cause, just try to understand. And what's the motive then? Motive is your final cause. In Aristotelian way, in Aristotelian language, it's a final cause, and motive has a definite end. Just try to understand. It has the definite end, or the vision of idea of definite object, idea of definite end, better to say. There is idea of definite object, you can say, for man. Yes, of course, when suppose some person buys a car, of course, he get kind of satisfaction, and it was just a pleasure, which was the driving force, but the car was the object, but this particular definite end was the motive. Yes, of course, the ultimate end for Hume, and that is why Bentham and Mill say that the ultimate end is nothing but the pleasure and pain. So they do not difference, they do not make a difference, they do not take differently your efficient as well as the final cause. That is why they say that motive is nothing but the pleasure, and that's why they are hedonists. But still we know, the pleasure is a consequence, or that's a kind of satisfaction, and pleasure is again, pleasure is an emotion, and emotions are blind. Man is a rational being. Man thinks about something and decides something. So there is a complete process of thinking. It's a well thought decision. So it's a well thought decision. And the decision, there is a deliberation, there is an object, there is a motive, there is an intention. Earlier we have discussed this one. And even when before taking decision, man thinks all pros and cons, and tries to perceive every nook and a corner, and also tries to perceive the means as well as the end, and also anticipate the unforeseen end. So these all are the factors of your, try to understand. So that is why the concept of Bentham and Mill cannot be accepted as a right explanation. And also come back to your consequences. So we can say it's a consequence. So now we can say it's a consequence, or consequences is the object of moral evaluation. Okay, is the object of moral evaluation, fine. But can we say that the only consequence is a cause of, for example, suppose there is a surgeon, and surgeon makes a surgery. Surgeon does a surgery, of a patient, and ultimately, suppose he is doing surgery with his utmost care and with the best of his intention, but still patient dies. Now see the case. Despite the putting best of effort and with the best intention, he could not save the patient. The consequence is not good. Consequence is not good. But what about his action? But what about the worth of his action? His action is good. So this example says that it's not the consequence. In fact, it's a motive. His definite end was, now you can see the difference between, his difference was a certain definite end. His motive was to cure the patient. Understand? So his motive was, there is a definite end. And again we can take another example. Suppose there is a beggar and he is a begging, and suppose the person flings half of a crown, I mean to say coin, and suppose the beggar picks up the coin and buys something for himself, and kind of the food, item of food, and he takes it, and he gets a satisfaction. Now can we call this action as good? Can we call this action good? Is it possible? No, because motive was to break his head. But beggar picked up the coin and bought something. That's a different case. That's the actual state of affairs. But what was the motive? Motive was to break his head. So such action cannot be called good. So what we have learned? it's a motive. Motive is more important than consequences. This is the hot debate between your hedonist and restless. This is the hot debate. Motive is more important than rationalist. Motive is more important than consequences. This is the hard debate between hedonist and rationalist. Later on, again we will be discussing rationalist, hedonist. So there have been a great debate between your rationalist and for this purpose. Consequences are not important. The result, the motive is important. And that's why the Kant is a great rationalist, consequentialism, he doesn't believe in consequentialism. And now come back. That's why his philosophy, his moral philosophy is known as a jural ethics, formal ethics. Later on we will discuss with Kant. Now come back. So this is your and second. So I have discussed the first thing, your consequence and a motive. And now we got the point that it's a motive. And now move to second. Is it only the motive is the only object of a moral? It's only object of moral judgment, or something else? Yes, of course there is something else. What is that something else? Try to understand. Is intention or its only motive? Now we are going to intention. Just try to understand. And as far as the intention, this intention is concerned, what is intention first? Intention is first thing, is wider than the motive. Motive is just the final cause, definite end. But this intention is wider than your motive. Wider than motive. Wider than your motive. Why it's wider than the motive? Because it includes the end as well as the means. Earlier you have studied that the motive has a definite end, but intention is not only end, it's a means as well as end. It includes both means as well as end. Try to understand. Now again examine. For Marx, Marx says that if your end is good, then you can apply any kind of means. Means is not important. The end is important for Marx. But for Gandhi, the thinker like Gandhi says means justify the end. On contrary, Marx says end justifies the means. But now if you examine them seriously, then you know that it is what? Just see the case of Gandhi. Gandhi says only good means can produce a good end. And he takes, the relation between means and end as incompatible, as metaphysical, and also as a, just like a common example if you want to take an everyday example, is like seed and a tree. So as a seed contains the tree, similarly means contains the end. And your Gita also defines in the same manner. And even your life also teaches us. Life also teaches the same thing, that means, yes, in the beginning we do not accept such a philosophy or such a moral thought, but later or sooner, but along with the passage of life, along with the course of time, you become to know then that the means is also equally important. And again, but as far as the ethics is concerned, as far as the moral evaluation is concerned, we know if means is not good, means and end both should be good. Both should be good. If both are not good, then we cannot call this action. You know this, for example, suppose a hard laborer. A laborer is earning, hardly, his earning is not more than his hand to mouth. His livelihood, his earning is not more than his livelihood, just livelihood. Even he is not able to, to make a good education for their children, to provide them a good education. And, and even he cannot make his own house. So these are the things, but still just his life is just only hand to mouth. But we appreciate him. Why? Because he is a hard laborer. Because he earns his livelihood through hard labor. But on the other hand, on contrary, suppose there is a pocket picker. Pocket picker picks a lot of money, but we do not appreciate him. We do not appreciate his action. Why? Because the means is not good. Or any, you can take the example of any other thing. We have just for the sake of understanding, we have taken this particular example. So example you can take. Now, so the thing is, the means and end both should be good. So we have not only, we should have, we cannot accept only the motive as the object of motive, as the only object of moral judgment, but it is also the intention. Both are the object. And let us move further. Is character of a person, is the character of a person is the means of, character. Now we are going to the third factor, or you can say the fourth one, but better to call it third. Character. Is it character can be taken an object of moral judgment, moral evaluation, whether you call it judgment or evaluation. Think over it. We know that character, even we know that a person who is having very good character or having a sound character, meritorious character, not meritorious character, meritorious, virtuous man. Okay. Yes, why not meritorious action? You call action meritorious character, fine, why not? Okay, but better to call it virtuous man. Suppose a person, as a virtuous person, has a very good character, but even a virtuous person can also commit a mistake, can also make a mistake. So it's not a character. And even on the other hand, the person who is having a very bad character, a person of a bad character can also perform a good action, or sometimes very good action. So character should not be taken as the object. It should not be taken as the object of it should not be taken as the object of our moral judgment, moral evaluation. It's only motive, and so these two are the objects. Just try to understand. These two are the object of your moral evaluation. And now move, let us further. Now we are going to discuss the subject of a moral judgment. Just try to understand. It's a very, very interesting. Just try to understand. It's very, very interesting. X1 is our subject. Of moral judgment. Okay, just try to understand. Now we are going to, what is this subject? Actually, what happens, this morality, as far as the reflective morality is concerned, the person himself is, the subject, and he is the subject, and you will be surprised to know that he is a judge also. So he is as an agent as well as he is a judge. The man, the individual which performs the action, just try to understand. Individual. every individual performs action. Now it has two parts, actual and ideal. Its actual status is known as, we can call it an agent, and it has also a rational self. This is actual self, and this is the ideal self. So it has, we are, even you can take your example of yourself. Always you examine your own action. Always we examine our own action. So we are judge as well as the agent. We perform the action, and as we, this is our actual self. Actual self. And this is our ideal self. This is also known as the rational self. The ideal self is your rational self. The actual self is your sentient self, or lower self. First one is also known as the lower self. Second is also known as the higher self. Again, the first one is known as your individual self. Second one is known as the social self. And it's your ideal self examines the actual self. Ideal self, always there you have some notions of ideals in your mind. So you examine your every action. So it's a person himself is a spectator. This ideal self is a spectator. It's a spectator. And this, it's a person, it is a judge. This ideal self is a judge. And this agent is judged off to something which is judged off. And this ideal self is a judge. Yes, of course, he is not there is no cognizer, he is not the cognizer of, Actually, he performs the action, so no individual self is cognizer of morality or moral ideals. It's a beautiful term, cognizer. No one is cognizer. But he himself becomes, the judge, the cognizer. Every individual performs his action always, with his conviction. This individual performs his action with his own conviction. We have some certain conviction, We have some certain conviction. And our conviction, we can have imperfect knowledge. We can have imperfect knowledge. No one has a perfect knowledge, as we know. So, as far as the validity, now just try to understand. So, we have to understand who is the cognizer, who is the spectator, who is the judge. It's ideal self, it's a rational self, it's a social self, it's a higher self. And now we are going to discuss the validity of, just try to understand. Now we are trying to understand the validity, how we determine this validity, just try to understand. So the validity of your moral judgment. So validity, there is subjective validity or objective validity. Earlier we have said that it has objective validity. Fine, it has objective validity, but this objective validity, depends on the conviction of no one is perfect, no one has a perfect knowledge, so no one can know the cosmic order, right? Yes, everyone tries to align always the human will with the divine will. Everyone is always in every action is trying nothing but to, if he is a moral being, if he is a virtuous man, then he is trying in every course of action, aligning his action, aligning his personal will and personal reason with the divine will and divine reason. So always every individual tries to make a harmony between the personal will and the divine will. But no one knows the cosmic will or divine will. So that's why there we cannot call the complete objective validity. So there is no absolute objectivity in moral judgments. That's why we give importance to intention. Now you can understand why. So first thing, as far as this absolute objective validity is concerned, or complete the objective validity is concerned, that's a matter of metaphysics. First thing you understand, because the cosmic will or the cosmic order, to explain the cosmic will and a cosmic order is subject matter of metaphysics. That's not the subject matter of ethics. Ethics have just taken it. Ethics has just presumed it and has taken it from metaphysics. So I think you understand, and that's why there is no complete objective validity about the moral judgment, because it depends on the knowledge and a conviction of a particular person. Yes, the only thing is he can perform his action with his best of his intention. That's the thing. So, and that is why the intention becomes so important in a moral judgment. So, it's intention which is the most important element. Consequences are also important with the motive. So, motive by all are object. To determine the objective validity, all are important. But the but the significant factor is, the important factor is intention. All are determining factors, but the ultimate determining factor is your intention. So if intention is in Kantian language, later on we will discuss when Kant will say nothing is good but the good will. Neither in this world nor beyond the world, nothing is good but goodwill. So later on with Kant we will be discussing this particular point. Right now come back. So this is your moral judgment and nature of moral judgment. Okay, and now we have to move the development of moral consciousness. So this was your moral consciousness, which we have studied within the ambit of moral judgment. That was the very first point, your moral consciousness, and three aspects of moral consciousness: cognitive, affective and cognitive. And now you can recall it that the cognitive first aspect is your nothing but the moral judgment. And again we are going to discuss the development of moral consciousness, how it has been developed, how it could have developed. Okay, but before going to discuss that particular topic, let me see the time first. Okay, we have sufficient time still. So the next topic is just try to understand, our next topic is the development of moral consciousness. Try to understand. Development of moral consciousness. The very first thing, just try to understand, and the first thing, we have to understand how it has been developed. To understand this one, we have to understand the development of the human conduct or emergence of human conduct. What is human conduct? Development. Better to call it development of human conduct. Okay, so now development of human conduct. The first thing, as when you perceive the animals, Generally, we have perceived that gregarious animals, they imitate the function of their elders. The animals, gregarious animals, always live in herds, not herds, herd. The gregarious animals always live in a herd, cattle. So when you examine the cattle, generally you see the newborn or the young one always tries to copy their seniors, their elders, their seniors. This is known as kind of imitation. So the action begins, the animal behavior begins with imitation. Imitation is kind of instinct. Imitation. So imitation is, this is the imitation. This is kind of instinct. Remember it. And many behavior are instinctive. They have also the kind of the feelings. They have a feeling of love. They love their children. They love their children, and you can examine in any kind of animals, any kind of gregarious animal. So they love their children. Yes, of course, with the course of time they forget their own child. That's another matter. But they have some certain kind of instinct. So they live their life through instinct. So instincts are very important. If you want to understand, instincts are very, very strong also. As we generally say that we never tease them. Who tease them? Who tease the birds to make the nest? When they read the geometry, when they read this embroidery, no. But they are able to make their nests, and beautiful nests they make. So they are able, the three things as far as the food, mate, and even shelter, all three which are needed for life, they arrange it. Food, mate. So for these three important things which are important for life, they are programmed with these instincts. So they have also the instinct, as they have the instinct of imitation, sincerely, and similarly they have also instinct of love. So they have also instinct of love. So these are the instinct. And what happens? So when we examine like this animal, the noble savage, the savage who are savage, the primitive men. If you examine the savage, what happens? Savage, their behavior is always molded and governed by imitations and suggestions. So their behavior is molded by imitation again, and imitation and suggestions. And suggestions. Imitations and suggestions. So these are two important things. Through suggestions and imitations, we train our, we means savage, in a primitive man, I am talking about, in a primitive age, in ancient times. In ancient times, men tamed their children with the suggestions and imitation. And as far as the imitation is concerned, that's the instinct they do have. Suggestions are given by the elders. Suggestions are given by their elders. So it's a suggestion and imitation which make the custom. So such kind of this, it make a group behavior. It make a kind of a fixed behavior, a group behavior. It becomes, when it becomes repeated and fixed, and when it goes from one generation to another, it goes from one generation to another. And when it is transferred, it is transferred from one generation to another. So it becomes almost, many times when it is repeated, then it becomes fixed. This group base, it becomes fixed. And once the fixed group base of behavior base of human behavior or behavior group base of fixed group base fixed group base fixed fixed group base of human behavior is known as your custom. Just try to understand, this is the first thing. This is just the beginning of custom. Try to understand it. It comes from imitation and suggestibility. It comes from the imitation and suggestions. This is the first thing what you have to understand, because this custom is the locus of your ethics, This is the meaning, that this is the root of your ethics. And now, so first thing to understand custom is the fixed ways of the human behavior. And now this is, once it is fixed, this later on it will be approved by group. So it will be approved by group. Once it is approved, now it is known as a custom. Now it is known as a custom. So the group base of behavior, repeated fixed group base of behavior, when approved by the society, is known as a custom. This is your custom, and it will be the morality. It will be the basis of morality. It will be the basis of ethics. This is the basis of your customary morality. Today we are going to discuss the difference between your customary morality and reflective morality. But before going to that, just try to understand what is this customary morality, what is its origin, and what are the ways to enforcing it. Okay, so these are the things we have to understand. Okay, just try to understand. So first thing you have to, I think you understand now the fixed ways of behavior is known as a custom when it is approved by the society, approved by the group or society, whatever you call it. And that's the first thing. And now let us move. What happens sometimes, but once slowly and gradually, once it is approved, once it has become become a custom. Now the sooner or later it will be known as, it will be taken as, converted as a positive law. When it becomes a positive law? It becomes a positive law when violation of custom, when these customs are enforced. Once these customs are enforced through threats of punishment and penalties, through threats of punishments and penalties, when this, then it becomes a positive law. So custom is converted now into a positive law, and once it is converted into positive law, then everyone has, there is hardly any difference between positive law and a custom. The only difference is the coercion. The only difference is it is enforced. When it is free to do, when individual is free to follow the custom or not, that's only custom. But once it is enforced to individuals, then it is a positive law. And once it is enforced, then individuals start thinking about it, because these are now forced by society. And who are the custodian of this positive law? We will discuss. So once it is forced, When there is a threats and penalties, now they are bound, they are compelled, they are forced to accept it. And once it is, so they are compelled to, I now come to the point. So once they are compelled, then they start thinking about it. Then start the thinking. And there are also some other reason why they begin to think about it. They begin to think about it because the laws are also sometimes contrary with each other. Customs are also contrary, but that's another, but there is a freedom. But as far as the laws are concerned, so there are some, the contradictions are, sometimes they are contrary with each other. So it's individual begins to think about it and tries to find out the moral idea. So it tries to find out the moral idea. Moral idea, and now it's a beginning of just a reflective morality, but it still come back. Now this is the moral idea, and when there is a moral idea, just now see, try to understand. But again, there have been a continuous struggle between the freedom and authority. There is a continuous conflict between freedom and authority, liberty and authority. Liberty means individual tries to liberty, and authority. And okay. Okay, it's all right, leave that. Now come back to the point. We have been discussing the moral idea. Again, when there is a conflict among the laws, then individual tries to find out the principles, underlying principles among the laws, underlying principles among underlying principle of the laws. I'm sorry. And so moral ideas, then in such a manner, then he goes from moral ideas to ideas about morality. This is done by the Bosanquet. Bosanquet is the person who have made, Bosanquet is the man, is the philosopher who have made this distinction and this development. Then he goes from this, his ideas, moral ideas, goes to ideas about morality. Ideas about morality. When he reaches to ideas about morality, so this is known as ethics. This is known as ethics, and this moral idea is known as morality. Now you can see the difference between morality and ethics. This is the difference between morality and ethics. Moral ideas is morality. It's a development from morality. But once it is developed, the ethics, then again it will come back to your conscience. So now this is development from morality to ethics. First comes the morality, then ethics. Earlier in customary morality, ethics comes first. Ethics means social norms comes first. But now, in moral ideas. This is the moral ideas. Then one thinks, one goes from, one tries to understand underlying principle, underlying principle, underlying principle, are better to call underlying principles among the moral ideas, because there is not only one moral principle, many principles. So it goes from moral ideas to ideas about morality. Now it thinks about ideas about the morality. So once ideas about the morality, this is known as your ethics. So this is, this distinction is done by your Bosanquet. And now move, what is the source of, come back on your customs. We have been discussing the customs. Now, or you can say the customs as a standard of customs, as standard of morality. Just try to understand. We are discussing, and now, so we have discussed under this point that who are the, as far as this customs as a standard of morality is concerned, we know that it is unconscious and imitative. This custom, first thing we have to know over here, it is unconscious and imitative. Okay, unconscious and imitative, fine. And who are the custodian of this customary morality or customs as a standard? How it is, the chiefs, priests, old men are the custodian. Who are the custodian of the customs? Second point, your chiefs, priests, priests and old men and women. Old men and women, chiefs and priests are generally the custodian of these customs. They protect it, they preserve it. And now, as far as the origin is concerned, as far as the development is concerned, we have discussed. Now see, what's the origin? Where does it actually begin? It begins in a family. So the first thing, now we are coming on men. We are taking the example of now. Men are a tribal society. When you take the example of men are a tribal society. We are discussing the men. So it's a family. This is the first thing. This is the origin of, the family is, in a family there are suggestions. First thing, imitations. Children learn imitations. And there is also suggestions. Imitations, suggestions, and there are also, the instincts are also instincts, like a filial love, parents' love. There is a filial love, There is also parental love. There is also love of, wife and husband. There is also, the love of wife and husband. So this is the thing where this is the first school where they learn these things. So, and what happens? So it is the origin of, and very interesting thing, another very interesting thing is when they go outside, when the family go for hunting, for suppose fishing or hunting, when they go for fishing or hunting, what happens? Everyone has one's own role, has one's own role. Everyone has one's own role, and at the same time everyone has one's own particular job, kind of job, and everyone has its own share, also the share, and yes, of course the lion's share goes to the head of the family, but there is a share, and what's more than that, is always that everyone has its own role, its own job, right and duties, you can say, in other words, everyone, there is a right, certain rights and duties of everyone. This is the thing. And on the basis of right, so it's this family, the family affair is based on the give and take. And again, so society is also, the basic principle is of morality is give and take, of customary morality. The basic principle of customary morality is, is based on give and take. Better to write over here. Okay, let me. Give and take. And even when the individual, there is also the same principle in between individual and society. But that's not our subject matter. Now the thing is that this is the principle of give and take. On the basis of give and take, then these things, some customs, the customs develops, or you can say the customs develop, okay, itself. And now, so this is your first thing, family. Second, how customs are developed. What is the origin of customs? Development we have already seen. Now we are talking about the origin of customs. Origin of customs, whereby the first is your family, and now say the second. What is the second? When you discuss the origin of custom, second is what happens generally when the group is behaving in such a particular manner. What happens? Some behavior be, call them, be, make a harmony with them, with it, we call it a good luck, be accompanied with good luck, and someone with the bad luck. Successful ways are, accompanied with good luck, and unsuccessful ways are accompanied, are discarded and generally accompanied with bad luck. So successful ways, slowly and gradually becomes as a custom. This is also a very, natural process. So successful ways, slowly and gradually, they are, equated with good luck, and they become a customs. Why as a customs? Why is a custom? Because everyone wants a successful way to adopt. So everyone wants to adopt a successful way. So, and unsuccessful ways, no one wants. Unsuccessful ways are equated with bad luck. So that is discarded. In such a manner it becomes a custom. and the good luck, and as far as the good luck and bad luck are concerned, it is rooted in, it is equated with unseen power. Unseen power is accepted as, now this is the role of unseen power, try to understand. Unseen power. Now this is the beginning of the religion. This is the beginning of your tribal religion. Now unseen power came into existence, and that's why the individual in a family or in a society or in a tribal society takes the language, customs and manners. Individual takes the customs and manners I am talking about the manners, not manner. Manners, customs and manners, language and religion. Language and religion. So these are the basic norms. Individual takes from society customs and manners, language and religion. And how they take? On the basis of imitation and suggestibility. Imitation and suggestibility are the means to attain these things, to acquire these things. So unseen power came into existence. And now what is the third way? What is the third origin of your morality, of your custom? The third way, the third origin of your custom is what happens when some individual performs an action, and suppose action is very daring. So society always, in primitive society, in tribal society, still it is there, daring. Daring action is applauded. It's applauded. Still it is there. When they applaud the daring action, so the daring action is applauded. And what happens then? Then its individual opinion becomes important. Then now this is, you can say, the emergence of individual opinion. So individual opinion, this is a kind of individual opinion. Individual opinion. Now the individual opinion influences the society and molds some custom, adds some, it gives a new custom to society in such a manner. So new customs emerges through this daring action, because they are applauded by the society. And okay, so okay, so this is there. These are three sources, main origin. These are three main origin of your customs. And now there are some ways to enforce them on individual. Let us discuss that, also very interesting. Let us discuss the ways of enforcing the custom. And who have given this ways of, it's Dewey and Tufts are two great philosophers. Dewey, American philosopher, and Tufts, his name is Tufts. Dewey and Tufts, but the great philosopher who have given this concept, how the custom is enforced to society or to individuals. So it is enforced through, the first thing he says, the very first thing, try to understand. The first thing is approval and disapproval. Approval and disapproval. Approval and disapproval. That's very interesting. Still it works in your society. Still most of your Indian society is running through customary morality. It is still going on with the customary morality. is governed by the customary morality, better to say. So, approval and disapproval. What is approval and disapproval? Social approval and social disapproval. Social approval is, celebrated with the dance, with the ritual, with the dance, and with the song, dance, appreciations. And disapproval is expressed through excommunication, extermination. These are the things: excommunication, social boycott. So, social boycott, excommunication, extermination are ways to disapproval of an individual. And approval, the dance, the songs, many ways they celebrate. And even in a simple action, in a particular action, appreciation. So, this is the approval. In such a way, it can be enforced. When you appreciate someone, okay, then you enforce. And second, try to understand. Second, the important thing is your way to enforce the custom is, what is the second important? Second important thing is your taboos. Try to understand. What are taboos? Taboos are, let me see the time. Okay, it's enough for today. Let me discuss this taboos and then fine. Taboos is when you say the taboos is, it's enough for today. Tomorrow we will discuss.